Good morning, everyone. I have a scintillating government topic for you. Applying analytics and innovation for agency transformation and success. Aren't you excited about that? Yeah. All right, let's go. So we'll go to the next slide, please. So I wanted to structure this presentation with three parts. First, give you a little background, because at the end of the day, what we bring to the table as humans into this equation is absolutely key into our philosophy and also what we bring into solving problems. And I think this is a very key point, that no matter where we are in education, or academia or government or industry, we're all trying to solve problems. And so I wanted to bring that background into play. I want to provide a context for today's environment. Today's environment is rapidly changing. And I believe in the law of entropy. How many of you know the law of entropy, right? Nature abhors a vacuum, and things keep changing all the time, and things happen very, very quickly. So we need to be aware of that. I never thought I'm going to bring entropy into this, but just want to represent to my kids that I also got chemistry taken care of here. And I want to give you a little sample approach of what we at the department level are doing. I have 30 plus years in the business, in industry and government, and that has sort of shaped my opinion and how we go forward. Next slide, please. Next slide, if you don't mind. There we go. All right, so next one. Oh, thanks, there we are. A man with a remote control, dangerous here. All right. So my background is I'm an engineer. My degrees are in engineering and management, and also certifications from the National Defense University. All that means is that I have perseverance to go through and make sure that we actually apply some of these things into our government environment. At Boeing Company, I realized in terms of what we did in analytics and innovation, that if you remember, the 777 was a plane that was designed completely digitally. And that was an example, although I wasn't personally involved in that, some of the things that we were doing in the company at the time with object-oriented design and data analytics was far ahead of its time. The CIO, the current CIO of an IRS, by the way, was the CIO at Boeing as well. So I just want to let you know that there's a lot of folks who are coming into government who've been helping out. I was also at NASA, where we did a lot of analytics as a contractor at Boeing. And I learned a lot of things in terms of what we can do to solve problems with analytics, but also bring innovation. The previous speakers have talked about from CIA and Congressman Hurd as well. I was at FBI, and at 9/11, I remember what happened that day, and I also remember our response. And analytics was absolutely key, and innovation was key, because we got into the intelligence business in addition to being the premier law enforcement agency in the world. A lot of things were done, and a lot of protection was done for our country, which we don't talk about, but all of that used analytics and innovation. I learned a lot there. When I served the Native Americans, they had the largest lawsuit against the US government, and we had to solve that problem to connect them back to the internet. And again, analytics and innovation was used to make sure we take care of that, and also the Interior Department. I also, in my night job, was asked by the federal CIO to help launch data.gov. How many of you heard of that? So data.gov was another example of open data that started this whole process of transparency. At GSA, I continued data.gov, but also did the federal cloud and FedRAMP to allow us to really get new mechanisms to deploy this technology, and also use some analytics on the fly, if you can do on-the-fly visualization, especially also with GIS. In Hawaii, I was the CIO at a state government where we learned how to do a portal and really serve citizens, because I wanted to see what happens at the state government level. And it's amazing what's going on in the 50 states, and that innovation, and also the connection with the federal government. And currently at Treasury, we're doing a lot of things from Treasury.gov, Data Center, which we'll talk about. We're doing Data Act. Our financialresearch.gov has a site which has got a lot of analytics that is conducted there. Of course, the IRS collects trillions of dollars for the United States, and a lot of analytics are used. Not only that, but I will also say we also do a lot of things in other areas in cyber. I can't talk those details, of course, but all I can tell you is analytics is heavily used by the government for data-driven decisions. So let me get to the second topic in terms of that's my background. And by the way, I just forgot to talk about my philosophy. The philosophy is about operational excellence, world-class customer service, and innovation in everything we do, so that we don't have the monopoly on the best ideas. Anyone can provide solutions that go forward. And I think if you live by those paradigms and use data-driven decisions, that's how we succeed in life. I'm of the opinion that Patricia Seibold's definition of data plus context equals information, and information plus experience equals knowledge. And then we are going on this continuum towards wisdom, requires data analytics, but innovation as a key way that we can go forward and make sure that everything we do is not just technology. It's about data, it's about process, it's also about the personal involvement that we have. So the pillars of our country have always been about participation, collaboration, last decade or so, transparency, and now innovation. And I think innovation has been one of our key points that has made us great. And I think we need to continue on that point. So at the recent Gartner conference last year, they talked about 3 or 4 takeaways that I really found very, very interesting. First, digital visionaries are building platforms throughout their business. So the digital way of doing business is really the way it's taken off. And the government is not far behind in this area. The other thing is the Internet of Things, which is going to have 26 billion units deployed by 2020 through various industries and technology. And these deployments will generate billions of data points for real-time processing and analysis. I think the government is a little bit behind in this area, but again, this has got some interesting challenges in terms of how much information and how much sensor networks and deployment that we have across, but how do you collate all that information and make sense of it in that Patricia Seibold continuum. And I think the main thing is companies, and I would also substitute the word government, will be valued on how this big data is not just put into action, but into algorithms that turn this data into action so that we can serve our customers and our citizens. And I think that's a key point here. But wait, there's more. Gartner also predicted and uses these wonderful hype cycles and everything else, but let me just summarize what it really says. What it really says from 2014 through 2016, that there is a transformation that is going along many axes where mobile, the cloud, and a lot of other things that we're doing with technology is really getting into, on the hand, ability to get analytics so that you can have just the information that you need to do your job on a daily basis. Meanwhile, 25 billion sensors are going to be deployed by 2020. Data is going to double every 2 years. And there's almost 5x growth through 2017 that's predicted. So at the bottom, digital government is driving need for real-time processing and analysis through analytics and agile innovation. And that's what our customers want, that's what our citizens want, and that's what we're trying to do. To highlight my point, as you can see from communications, we're now going into a Moore's Law that's going into 6-month activation, all from 18 months, right? Does anyone disagree with that? It's really moving fast. And while we're doing that, we're actually getting to quantum computing devices that may come in the next decade or so. Our smartphones are increasing and actually replacing the desktop, and I talked about data as well. And now you have got web pages everywhere. Between all this stuff that's data out there, we need to turn it with context into information, and then with analysis to take it basically into some of the things that we need to do in our daily mission. So with this in mind, while we're doing this, we are a free country, and so cyber is really taking off. We have 1,000% increase in incidents that have been reported in the federal government alone from FY 2005 till today, according to US CERT. All the analytics are showing us that the cyber threat is actually centered more around the human again. So while the human is the most innovative and providing solutions, they also are the most vulnerable in terms of getting spearphished, in terms of other things that they may do to damage the enterprise. But we are also using big data approaches for security and fraud. We won't go into too much detail here, but rest assured that we are blocking a lot. We're getting billions of access attempts. And I can tell you, we as a country are doing a heck of a job trying to protect against this new adversary where they can just basically attack in cyber time and internet time, and we have to be ready. And they have to be successful 1% of the time. We have to be successful 100% of the time with all the laws that we have and a 2-year budget time process. Just think about that, what that means. And that's some of the challenges that we face. Undeterred, we are talking about 3 levels of transformation and innovation: business transformation, technology transformation, and culture. I think you know which one is the toughest one. Does anyone have any doubt? Okay, it's organizational culture. So that's a very interesting thing. My point to you is analytics, innovation, at the end of the day, it's about people. You have to incentivize and set up a reward structure to fail fast, fail forward is fine, as long as you solve problems together. And if you make it a win-win proposition, that's what succeeds. Meanwhile, we have a lot of laws. We have the Klinger-Cohen Act. We have FISMA. We have FITARA, right? Have you heard of FITARA? Okay. So we have to make sure all of these are done. And while we're doing it, we want to make sure there's innovation and analytics. No pressure. So how are we doing it? Well, let me give you some examples. Our country has a GDP of about $16.7 trillion. And about $6 trillion is in federal, state, local, tribal government. $4 trillion comes into the federal government, out of which we, the Treasury Department, collect most of that, about $2 or $3 trillion that comes into the Treasury. To do that, we, as Congressman Hurd and others were mentioning, is $80 billion in federal government. Well, if you think about it, compared to what we have, one can argue either way. Yes, there's legacy IT and there are other things going on, but I would also say there's a lot that's being done in government in terms of the mission and services that we provide. Treasury is also spending its time to make sure that we protect the integrity of the financial system, we maintain a strong economy, create economic and job growth, and manage the U.S. government's finances and resources effectively. And I think to do that, analytics and innovation is used throughout everything that we do. We have 5 strategic goals, and as you can see, these goals is how we map all the way down to making sure that our programs are aligned with providing solutions. But let me get into some examples here as to what we're doing here. So first of all, when I said transformation, it requires business, technology, and governance. It is very important to realize that all of this transformation will require, make sure there's a line of sight to the goals all the way down to our strategies of how we change things. And along with that are things like data analytics and innovation is part of the programs, out of the many other programs that we need to do. So let me just go through that in a second. The 5 goals in the strategic plan for Treasury set the foundation for strategic transformation for the entire Treasury Department. What we're doing in my shop are the 4 to the right of that. First, we want to make sure that we secure the enterprise. To secure the enterprise, we want innovation and analytics used throughout to make sure that make sure from all the chaff we select what's really important in terms of what's threatening us. I don't advertise this too much, and that's why you don't want to see a major cyber chart here. But you can be rest assured that we are collectively in the government not only working with the White House cyber sprint, but also the CSIP, the Cybersecurity Strategic Plan and Implementation Plan. We're also implementing the CNAP, which is the Cybersecurity National Action Plan. We are also implementing a lot of things that we are sharing amongst ourselves, amongst the CIOs, to look at what are these threats and who is coming where and what are they doing. We're checking that regularly. That requires a lot of analytics and actionable intelligence. Second, we're partnering. There's a lot of partnership going on, not only within the department, between bureaus and offices, but also with agencies like DHS, other 3-letter agencies, so that we can learn from each other what's going on. When I was in FBI, I saw that after 9/11. That was one of the best times in our government where everybody came together from CIA, NSA, NRO, FBI, of course, and others, and sharing information, and that horizontal fusion and linking together of some of the things that we needed to connect the dots was absolutely instrumental in what we did to fight terrorism and also on the intelligence field. The same thing is being done today in the cyber front. The challenge is that while we're doing this, our adversary has absolutely no compunction and no, should we say, limits into what they can do. So that's our challenge. And as we do this, the need for analytics and innovation is even more important. So now what we're trying to do is make sure anyone can come in and give ideas. How do we stop this? What can you do to make this happen? And think differently. So that's a very key point. Innovate, theme 3, is very, very key to our approach. Innovation really goes back to that human-centered point that I made earlier. What exactly, how do you incentivize not only government, but also contractors to be part of one team, to be a badgeless environment so that we can all work together to solve that. That is reward structure and culture at the bottom line, and it comes from the top. So one of the things that I'm trying to do is making sure that not only do I work with my bureau CIOs, but also within all the CXOs in the department, but also with my partners and colleagues, and make this a sort of a neighborhood watch program. Make sure that I can actually look at and commiserate on issues, but also learn from each other. You know, if you have that humility, it really changes things, and I think that's one of the things where industry, academia, and government are working together to solve these problems. Lastly, we have to invest. Even though it looks like the Treasury Department is obviously one of the top civilian agencies in terms of investment, we also bring in a lot of revenue for the United States, but also look at the financial system, which is obviously preeminent in the world. To do that requires a lot of work, a lot of analytics, and basically a lot of coordination across organizational lines. We have 9 core principles, and in there you'll see the one at the middle, at the top, and it talks about this innovation idea where anyone can come in and provide ideas on our intranet and come forward. So we're launching a next generation intranet that'll be allowing us all to collaborate real time and go forward and make sure that we can share information with each other and also meet regularly to kind of look at some of the common challenges and really incentivize people to share so that, again, a problem is not a problem if you can work together to solve it. And so I think that's working really well. The strategies on the right, and pardon me, I think you drew an Optimus Prime in there, and that's not really what we want in there. Looks like one of my staff snuck that in there, but anyway, that is not an officially sanctioned. Anyway, just wanted to hear. I guess I want to see if I was watching it actually. So okay. And I did. So I think what we're trying to show there is that these icons, the first one is operations. We need to make sure that operations work. It's all about infrastructure. IT always has to be on, and that's what we're doing there. On the second one, believe it or not, administration in the government takes about 40% of our resources. Anyone doubt that, by the way? So you need analytics for that, right? I mean, how do you do hiring, acquisition? So we have launched incredible amount of dashboards where I can now start seeing acquisition, what we're spending on, and it's a precursor to Fitara, so we're doing a lot in that area. Budget is another, so we want to look at dashboards as a service, and I think that's another key area that we're looking at for administration. The third, the other area on the right is governance. That looks like, well, governance, I mean, you know, come on. Well, governance is really important because governance also looks at all the things that we're doing in terms of not only from measuring what you get to looking at how we collectively work together to look at the portfolio. We have a $4 billion portfolio. I have to look at all 307 assets. I have to look at what's external facing, internal facing, and I'll show you that in a slide. And then look at what it really means in architecture. We have lost a little bit of the art of architecture in our country, and we need to get that back as an enterprise architect. To really make it practical so I can get to some of the solutions that we need. So we need to switch to solutions architecture. Next is that yellow is delivery, which is enterprise applications. At the end of the day, we need a digital government. To do digital government, we have to be mobile so that access is provided to authorized users anywhere, anytime, on any device, securely and reliably. I have here my device, a tablet, where I am doing FISMA high, sensitive but unclassified, that I can actually access with certain, all my privileges and all compliant and additional biometrics, that I'm able to get to my secure intranet and also the email. So this is a pilot, but the point is we are trying to make sure that really works. And the red one is security. Security is absolutely key. Cybersecurity is pervasive on everything that we do. And I think with that, we are really making sure that it works together. And the one in the middle, the icon formerly known as Optimus Prime, is basically transformation in terms of architecture, in terms of big data analytics, in terms of a lot of other things that we're doing, for example, with Data Act and so on and so forth, that's helping out. So let me just talk about that in a minute here. No government program would be good without having a full lineup and line of sight into how we all work together. But my training in the National Defense University and the IRM program, and I just offer this to all my colleagues here in government and industry and academia, that we have made sure that everything that we do, so let me just go from the left here, Our vision is a secure digital treasury. We have a service catalog of 87 services. We provide services to, first of all, on 3 lines. One, we provide the HR line of business services to 35 government agencies with about 120,000 customers. And so we require a lot of analytics for the HR, human resources. Second, we provide an infrastructure across Treasury to another 120,000 users and make at 860 locations. So how do we make sure all of those are connected and working together? Third, we also provide not only department oversight of the portfolio, but we're also providing another 5,000 users internal to the department and looking at making sure that they're provided the most secure FISMA high services that we need and other classified enclaves. To make that vision happen, we obviously have the 12 core competencies of the federal CIO. And then on the other side, I just want to focus in the middle. At the end of the day, this is about making sure that we have projects. So you see at the bottom there, those 3 strategies at the top that I've shown you before. We have launched specific 12 projects, and out of which data analytics and innovation is one of the projects, to make sure that there's something that you can get done and bring people together to make sure that they can actually see that solution implemented. And that's what we've done in terms of implementing our projects, and I'm pleased to announce that all of them are working. This is essentially how we do the analytics to make sure that all those that project portfolio is then looked at from a capital planning investment control. What are we investing in? How well are they performing in project management? And then what are some of the technology trends that we need to bring in? We have about 13,000 contracts that we award in Treasury out of that $4 billion. And how is that IT really spent? And how can I start looking at all the major investments? So this year, we have about 57 major investments out of that $4 billion, totaling about $2.6 billion. How do I make sure that we can open that up a little bit and get more competition in there? So that's one of the examples of what we're doing there. This is a very busy slide, so this was not an eye test, but I wanted to see if you were awake until this point of the presentation. So this just goes to show you how we think in terms of analytics and what it really tells us. At the top half, out of that $4 billion, that if I break it out, roughly about half of that is external facing and half of that is internal facing. There's some updates to these numbers here. So we look at first external versus internal, meaning what are we facing the citizen and what are we doing internally to make sure that our mission can be more effective and efficient going forward. Then we break it by business and service lines to allow us to look at how are we investing in anything from community and regional development, to business and industry development, to financial sector oversight, to global trade, and so on and so forth, permitting and licensing. So all of these services are government services that we provide, and we have mapped to that. Third, we look at how much money we're spending in each one of those areas, and how is that money being spent. And fourth, how many investments there are that total that particular business area. And fifth, of course, what we're interested in, and then below is the internal facing. And then the blue stuff, dark blue, is the top 10 that we focus on. But then what we're really after in analytics, which is the next frontier that we want to get, is what are the synergy opportunities that exist between these initiatives, and what are some of the things where we can actually leverage savings? So that's the challenge I ask all of you, that we'll be looking forward to helping and getting some help in this area, is how can I look at all these investments and then look at, could there be opportunities for enterprise license agreements? So we're going to do 5 enterprise license agreements this year. Can we reach some savings in there? Could we also look at all these systems and look at the technology architecture and see if there's anything in there where technology solutions can be leveraged better, right? So all of that stuff is part of analytics. By the way, all this information is public in the IT dashboard. And have you seen itdashboard.gov? I believe they're going through a renovation on that. But if you can do visualization on the fly, wouldn't that be great? How many of you remember recovery.gov? Recovery.gov, remember? You could do on-the-fly visualization. And if you do geoplatforms.gov, you can look at on-the-fly GIS overlays and look at that information and see how that works together. Well, that's what we're interested in. That's the kind of thing that we think would really transform how we look at government. And then use this information. I had much more prettier charts, but I want to illustrate this point to show what can come out of this. But what we really want out of this is how can we use that to make effective decision making. Second example, digital services. You've heard of USDS? So USDS is the White House initiative that's coming forward. 18F is the GSA initiative that couples with that. every agency, including ours, and I must represent here that Treasury was rated tops in the digital services plan, but who's counting? But you know what? That's nice, but at the end of the day, how do we put innovative solutions that people want? And that's our challenge. So we all have a little bit of money in this area, and how do I transform the rest of the culture to make sure that we can allow digital services so that I can focus again on business, technology, and culture, and really focus on the one in the middle where first start off with what are the third-party APIs, what are some of the social capabilities that we can use, what are some of the great design and user experience with appropriate security and content, and use analytics to solve those problems so that I can provide business solutions and allow people to change that culture. Let me tell you one thing that works in culture. When people make it a win-win situation and you can do agile delivery and they can have something in their hand and mobile like this, we proved this in 6 months that we could do FISMA High and it worked on a tablet device. How were we able to do that? We leverage solutions that are already available in government. So if you can do that, I can certainly use analytics and visualization and bring that to a mobile platform and deliver that. To me, that is where digital services will be changing the world. In state government, in my last job in Hawaii.gov, we were fortunate enough to win a lot of national awards, but the key thing was we came from nowhere. The idea was people were energized because we told them that it's absolutely okay to fail forward, fail fast, but solve problems and come up with solutions that citizens can use. And so that allowed them to have that user experience at the Hawaii.gov portal. And we even tried something called myhawaii.gov, which allowed them to see what are some of the services they use in their daily lives. So why couldn't we do that with mytreasury.gov? Why couldn't we do that with some of the other services and look at analytics on the fly with drop-down menus on a website? That's some of the things that we're hoping for. Example 3 is very interesting in terms of some of the things that we are doing in analytics in terms of many, many different databases that we have. I think the main interesting thing here that I want to point out here is that we are very, very interested in looking at how we can leverage across the various different classifications of data, the classifications of system according to FISMA, and then have indexing information so that I can go across these organizational lines without having a central repository and really make sure that I can bring innovation where all these different databases and systems can really work together with an enterprise approach. I don't think we've solved this problem fully, but we're on our way. So a couple of things that we want to talk about is, I just mentioned to you, I'm able to now look at cyber and look at a lot of threats that are coming in and get them to real tangible things that I can use. I can also look at TTPs that come in from cyber actors and see what I can use across government and then put that to specific things that we're doing. You can also go to a site called financialresearch.gov, which is an agency that is doing some tremendous work in terms of analytics and very, very high performing information for banking and other financial sectors. So take a look at that. I already talked about Data Act and USAspending.gov, which is being rolled out to make sure that that's available to everyone and will get unprecedented views into the data. I will say, for example, the Massachusetts government, state government, also has some incredible, where their Oracle backend is with a web front end, you're allowed to see some data and query that directly on the site. We're looking at something similar with Data Act to allow Treasury to help out the agencies with spending information that's made available so that you can see that information more readily all the way. And I think the other thing that I'll just like to say is that as we go forward, all of this stuff really, to summarize, requires innovation and analytics where it requires a solution where we can all pitch in and make sure that we can get this done. So I really want to close by saying that it's all about business, technology, and governance or culture. We need a lot of help. So I think acquisitions and Fitara will allow us to share that information with you and seek more information and solutions. And finally, I would just say that all the agencies, including the Treasury Department, are making tremendous progress in this area. And a lot of times we may not advertise things, but we're quiet behind the scenes. But you can be rest assured that as you pay attention to what we're doing, and including go to treasury.gov data center, you'll see a lot more stuff that's going to come out in this area. So thank you very much for listening to me today and making this as exciting as I can make it in terms of analytics and innovation. And hopefully I've solved some of the things that you're looking for. In case you want to talk to me later, I'll hang around for a little while. Thank you so much. Have a good day.